Yeah, we're a team of 6 landscape architects, and since the mid-90s, all we do is SuDS design. And I guess we're unusual that we come to SuDS design from that sort of design background. So for us, the sort of challenges and the opportunities are all just part of design for us. Quite often in design, the opportunities come out of the challenges that are presented with a product, with a scheme, with a site, and really for us that's where the joy of SuDS design is, and that's why it's all we do now. We don't do just landscape projects. We can't do that anymore. We can't separate the SuDS from landscape. For us, it's all just part of what landscapes do, and it means for me personally. And I think, for Bob in the mid-90s, he describes it as a sort of eureka moment when he discovered SuDS and realised there was this new idea that could really sort of transform landscapes and give it a new relevance, a new purpose, great for people and great for wildlife. And for the rest of the team, we all have great fun designing SuDS landscapes. So I'm going to take you through a sort of slideshow of some recent projects, and some slightly older ones with recent findings, really sort of celebrating how we take the constraints, I guess the challenges of managing water through our landscapes, and throughout the process just look for every opportunity that management of water can deliver a landscape. And it requires a mind shift away from what's actually quite, in our sort of human history, quite a recent approach to managing water, the sort of Victorian approach of piping it away really quickly. Lots of hard surfaces that deliver lots of pollution, that kill fish on a regular basis in London, that contribute to marine microplastics, that mean our urban waterways are wall-to-wall sewage fungus, and create all the flooding that we know very well. This is all the sort of Victorian approach of solving one problem, but kind of a bit like when you're putting wallpaper up, trying to get rid of one bubble, but another bubble appears somewhere else. It just moves the problem somewhere else. So it's a mind shift. And we need to think a little bit more like nature. Nature doesn't see rain as a problem. Nature sees rain as a massive opportunity. It's an opportunity for life to flourish. And we need to be thinking in a sort of similar way as we design our landscapes. When we design for managing water through a landscape, what can we do with that water as it travels through? What can we do for people, for wildlife? So I'm going to look at sort of four key aspects of those opportunities, which really sit in. We now have the 4 pillars of SuDS: the sort of water quantity, the water quality aspect, which probably on our projects is maybe around 10% of the work that we put into our projects is around the quality and the quantity of water, managing the attenuation and flows. Probably the 90% of it is really about the other 2. Once you've got that bit established, is how you integrate that into the landscape and deliver the biodiversity and the amenity benefits. So I'm going to sort of break into sort of 4 categories. First one being play. It's a favourite of ours. We're all probably still kids at heart. I don't know if anyone's met Bob, but he looks a bit like Father Christmas. He's getting on a bit, but I don't think anyone would deny that there's that sort of childish streak at heart. So we love working in sort of school environments like Andy. The pleasure that you can bring to kids, the extra sort of relevance and play opportunity, educational opportunity is great in schools. And this is what we call a swale maze. It has a functional aspect to it. Basically, it's a very convoluted swale, so it's got a very long travel time, so it's very effective. Got a long residence time, and lots of pollutants are taken out. But by making it convoluted, we've basically created a maze that, contrary to popular belief, in Britain it is not raining most of the time. So SuDS schemes are not functional as water management most of the time. So something like this swale maze, the maze is followable by kids, and they have to kind of jump over these little sort of balance beams, and the kids play in there, and when it rains the water follows that route, and the kids, well, they could go down that and get their feet wet, and that's fine, but then they have these little bridges and balance beams to go across. So really, it's, there we sort of took the idea of a maze and played around with it to create some play opportunity in a school. Similarly at Renfrew Rain Gardens in Newham, we did 4 demonstration rain gardens for the EA with groundwork, and this is just as it's been sort of seeded and turfed, so it's very sort of fresh, but this is the only sort of point in time where you could actually see the features we put in. So the sort of theme of this rain garden was play, sort of natural play. And just by creating landforms, kids are attracted to it. And SuDS does that. By storing water in the landscape, by conveying water in the landscape, you change the shape of the landscape, you change the topography, and it naturally attracts kids to follow those routes, to go in and out of basins. But we can also do things to encourage that play, like the balance beam going across the basin or the stepping stones, boulders at the back there. And it looks a bit raw there, day 1, but less than a year later, you can just sort of make out the balance beam. The boulders have gone completely; they're hidden away in the wildflower meadow there. So we've created this very functional basin, stores the 100 plus 30%, fully infiltrates that into the ground. But it's not doing that most of the time. So the rest of the time, or even when it is doing that, it just makes it more exciting. We'll have water in here, and your balance beam not falling off becomes even more important. It's completely safe through the sort of design profile of the basin, and the ultimate depth of water is actually quite shallow. Australia Road, sure, won't do too much on this because I'm sure you've seen lots of it, but a lot of the idea of this was just about integrating sort of play, not in a formal way, not with sort of play features, but we've got the sort of the walls around SuDS basins and what we call the wiggly wall that runs all the way through the main SuDS basin there, which follows a trail which links all the way through the site, through different SuDS basins. The idea that we wanted the children to be able to get close to the SuDS system, to be walking through the heart of it, for it to be just a natural part of their landscape to experience. And then occasionally then they might notice that there's shallow water on each side, and start asking the questions about, well, why is there water? Where's that coming from? And in this scheme, we kept all the water at the surface wherever possible, so you can see the water sources coming into this basin. And we'll see some shots later on of some of the features where we celebrate the flow of water to try and sort of subconsciously give the message that this landscape is managing water as well as it giving lots of other sort of community functions. So obviously play features a lot in schools as well, but this is a new science block to Bewdley School in Worcestershire, right on the banks of the River Severn, with a brook running sort of down this sort of southern end of the site, running into the River Severn. So a new science block. So we wanted to use the idea of it being a science block as an opportunity to use the rainwater in a sort of scientific way. So we'll come on to that a little bit later. But here we've basically got a new school and a new paved plaza area in this area was part of the playing field. And we've got 2 roof planes, one sort of falling to the north, one falling to the south. So we've kind of created 2 sub-catchments. We've broken that into separate sub-catchments. So we're dealing with the top roof area through a swale and a rain garden, and then a rill which runs across the front of the school, so keeping that flow visible wherever we can, and using it to create a sort of an architectural feature as it runs in front of the school. And then on this south side, the roof runs into what we call the sort of classroom gardens outside the science classrooms on this side of the school, so each classroom has access out to a sort of hard landscaped area where we sort of played around with the water a little bit scientifically. And we've got a pond with a dipping platform so they can look at the wildlife and sort of do monitoring of wildlife. And then both systems, with what comes out of the permanent pavement, run down a swale all the way down to Riddingsbrook and discharge. What's very nice about this project, and it doesn't happen that often, we're actually discharging directly into a watercourse, which is always really, really nice to be able to do rather than into surface water sewer or a combined sewer. Here's a view of a slightly contorted kid because I was doing the iPhone panorama thing. Not Missing. So yeah, this is the sort of plaza, which is all permeable paved, with flow control dropping into the swale. You can see the swale sort of running down to the brook at the bottom end there. Here's the sort of northern roof, which drops down into this rain garden. We've got the science garden on this side, and here you can see the sort of rill that joins us all up, running in front of the building. It's early days, so those lots of flag irises and sort of a marginal vegetation in there, which will sort of grow up to this height, lots of flowering plants, and be very beautiful. Where we've got the entrances, we've got a little bridge across. So we've got sort of wildlife connectivity right into the right onto the doorstep of this development. And there's our swale, again providing connectivity to what's actually a really rich habitat of the brook running up from the River Severn. So we've got the River Severn habitat running up a finger of brook, the sort of habitat around the brook, and then we've brought that in straight into the heart of our development, so that the biodiversity can then reach into our wetland area and provide enhanced biodiversity there. But I guess the most fun in a way was what we wanted to do with the rainwater. We wanted to provide sort of scientific demonstration with that sort of flow of water coming off the roof. So we've got 3 features which we put in, where we took water overhead. So we could have just put a channel in here, dropped it into the rill, which then sort of leads to the wetland, and also sort of the slots which water the trees which are placed along this elevation. But we wanted to make more of a feature of it, so we took it overhead and they dropped down, and one drops into a water wheel, and the students could measure the rate of that rotation and then compare that on different rainfall events. Also we've got a tipping bucket here, which is a classic water measuring device, but we've just made it into a sort of big feature here. So the students could measure how many litres it takes to make the bucket tip one way, how many to tip the other way, and then they could start calculating how many tips per minute and start working out what flow is coming off the roof. And then on the other side of the building we've got what's called a Torricelli tube. It's an Italian scientist who discovered the effect if you fill a column of water and put holes in it, because of the hydraulic head, the ones at the bottom sort of come out almost horizontally, and the ones at the top sort of almost drop down vertically, and the ones in between do a series of arcs. So when it rains, this tube fills up. There's a series of holes on the just on the back side here, and you can see where it's sort of laid the grass flat, how far it goes. It's a good sort of 3 or 4 meters that these jets come out. And again, it's all just examples of sort of the science around water. And each of these features we designed so that they could be unbolted, and the students could make their own tests and inventions and do similar things. And here you see in the background we've got one of the rain gardens, and you can see where it overflows into the rill, which runs around the front of the building. This is Robinswood School, not far from where we're based in Stroud, where this area of there, what was monocultural sort of playing field grass area, was put over to a SuDS scheme to protect them from flooding. They were regularly getting flooded from overland flows. So this is in action. It doesn't always look like this. Of course, it's dry most of the time. And you can see we've got another swale maze going on through here with these balance beams. So you can see the kids have still got access now into this landscape, even when it's in. It's not full here, but it's probably about half full. And this area is now their forest school area, and since this was put in, there's a teacher who was all but giving up on teaching. He's now a full-time forest school teacher for the school. So it's an example of how, a fairly constrained site, we've put some of that site over to a SuDS functionality, but really it's unlocked almost a more significant opportunity, which is now every child, every class has a significant amount of time every week in a forest school area, which is rich in biodiversity and changes. So they will go out in different weathers and they do sculptures and they look at reflections in the water when it rains. They've got the pond with dipping platform areas. So in terms of education, it's become a great resource. Then there's sort of placemaking and visual interest opportunities that SuDS delivers. This is before. I want to make that clear. This is very, very quickly. I'm sure a lot of you have seen Australia Road, but it's a sort of classic case of using SuDS to generate a sense of place, a new sense of place, and a place for the community. So here we've got there's the sort of walls of the main SuDS basin with a kid bouncing on the wall, and wildlife. And the sort of visual interest of was looking for opportunities to celebrate the flow of water. We want it to be as clear as possible that something special is going on here with water. We could have. This is about getting water off a roof down to a rain garden. The rain garden itself is beautiful, but that's just planting choice. But it is watered every time it rains, so that helps it become lush. But we could have just dropped that water down in rainwater pipes and taken it directly at ground level into that rain garden, but we wanted to do something a bit more special to create a sense of place and to try and hint at the idea that something different's going on here, so people might actually see something happening when it's raining. So we've got this overhead channel with these corten grass leaves holding it up, and the water drops down this sort of central helix to a little pad at the bottom in the centre of the rain garden. And it's a bit stuttery. I think the computer's probably struggling with it. But you get this amazing effect when it rains of the water sort of being spread between the steel ropes as a thin sheet, and then that sort of surface tension breaking, and the sheet suddenly disappearing, and then a new one appearing. And the staff at the school, we wanted to make a prototype of this to see exactly how it worked. The risks were quite low because they're away from the building, so we knew it wasn't going to splash back on the building. But we weren't actually kind of expecting this to happen, so this was a kind of nice surprise. One time when I visited the school, the staff and kids were describing how when it rains they go outside because the water seems to kind of go the other way up this thing. So I was like, well, what do you mean? So we got a hose pipe and we ran a hose pipe and saw this effect. These sort of sheets of water develop, but then they sort of spring up. So there's a couple of those on site, and it's a kind of an example of what we like to. We've got a phrase that we use, which is we like to think that our landscapes come alive when it rains. And there's an example of how we try and make the landscapes come alive when it rains. And the other thing we like to think is that people might like to go outside and experience our landscapes when it rains. That if things are interesting, if they can see a flow of water and maybe follow that flow and see its progress through a scheme, then actually people might like to go out. They might like to even float things in rills and see where they go, and have poo stick races or things like this. Again, placemaking, the kind of challenge here is it's a very formal listed building sort of setting. It was an old school which was being converted into sort of civic offices. So marriages, death certificates, ceremonies, all sorts of things going on here. So we wanted a landscape that fitted that sort of historic setting. It needed a SuDS functionality, and so we were able to integrate the SuDS functionality into a very classical looking garden, where the sort of main rainwater pipes come out through this sort of central sort of cascade water feature, and then into a sort of wetland area in the middle. But this whole area here, this whole paved and grassed area, you can see how it's kind of got banks on the sides. That whole area can store water in a large rainfall event. And it's surrounded by the paving around the outside. It's all permeable paving, and that area is lucky with infiltration rates. It's 100% infiltrating site, up to the 100 plus 30%. So you'll rarely ever see any water across here. Most of the day-to-day events will be managed in these sort of lesser features or within the permeable paving. Only, very, very rarely would you ever start seeing this actually start getting a significant depth of water in. And part of the issue or one of the sort of frustrations we have with doing these sort of water features that only come alive when it rains is that the rest of the time they're sort of dormant. And we're not fans of water features. we call it dead water. Typically, water features need some kind of chemical treatment to, make sure that you don't get any sort of bacterial growth in the water. So you end up recycling sort of what we call dead water, offers no sort of biodiversity benefit. So what we did on this one was, as water comes down this cascade, it's actually intercepted at first, and it goes into a rainwater sort of storage tank, and then we have a solar pump which recycles that in sunny weather when people might be outside, recycles it back through the cascade. Now I think this is an idea that we'll probably take through to other projects as well, so like that Australia Road project, we might in sunny weather be able to have features like that happening even when it's not raining, by recycling low nutrient clean rainwater back through the system in a sustainable way using photovoltaics. Again, great place before. Non-permeable paving. So this was a great opportunity for a bit of placemaking, really. This is an entrance to a leisure centre in Measham in the Midlands. Really dull and inspiring entrance with these peculiar, tiny little planted areas with a domestic scale weeping willow or something. Really, classic. We've all experienced these sorts of dull, dead, nondescript places that do nothing to celebrate the fun and enjoyment that might go on inside the leisure centre. So the challenge here, this was with Trent Rivers Trust. We wanted to do SuDS here. We did some wetlands behind, dropping into a little brook. But we were really keen to do something with this entrance to really introduce the community to what SuDS could bring them, and hopefully then unlock opportunities within the residential areas themselves. So we decided to create 2 rain gardens here, and it's a pretty significant transformation. I hope you'll agree. Slightly bigger tree, very simple principles. We collected all the rainwater from all these gutters on this side of the building. Took them in surface channels using the existing paving, just sort of reprofiling the existing paving. All sort of recycled pavers, obviously we took quite a lot out of the centre. Into 2 hydraulically connected rain gardens, so we only need 1 outlet. But that hydraulic connection gave us the opportunity to do a kind of bridge feature as you come in, so as you move towards the entrance of the leisure centre, you're sort of funneled in by these big circular rain gardens across a little bridge. And as you walk across the bridge, then that maybe makes you think, well, why am I walking across a bridge? And why is that landscape a little bit lower on each side? Maybe there's something, when we walk across bridges, typically we think water. So hopefully people will start thinking, oh, maybe this has a water function somewhere. They might notice that there's these channels, these sort of steel channels running along the bottom of the building here, and realise that actually water is being funneled to these rain gardens. Biodiversity. This is Hazley School, new school building, quite a lot of grounds, and there's a specific requirement to try and support newts. And that brings its own challenges. Particularly what we want is source control. We want to clean the water. This is a great opportunity of SuDS, is not just to produce clean water at the end of the system into whatever receiving watercourse, but actually to create clean water throughout our development, which allows us to support biodiversity within our development itself. So here we've got permeable paving. So that's our source control. It's taken out the biggest hit of pollutants. It's slowing the flow down. And that's being delivered to, again, very fresh, recently constructed, but gives you it's a good slide for demonstrating the inlets and outlets. Basically, we've got no gullies on this scheme because gullies kill newts and amphibians a lot. They kill a lot of newts and amphibians. So here, what we've got are we use these a lot. These sort of protected inlets and outlets, baskets with perforated pipes in. So these can't kill newts and frogs and toads. And then the design of this pond was specifically designed to benefit great crested newts, and now it looks like this. And there's been a recent ecological survey done on it, just to find that over the years the newt population has just exploded. It's been incredibly successful, and actually those same ecologists did a survey of a site not far away and found in about 6 gullies they found around 60 newts, smooth and great crested newts, in a nearby scheme, and of course, there's nothing apart from predators to kill newts on this site. So we call it Newtopia. And so you can see basically this connectivity of this sort of newt foraging habitat running all the way up on the edge of the playing fields down to these ponds, and there's a sort of series of ponds and basins. It's not just about the wetlands themselves, but the bits in between where the newts can forage for food are also really important, and that connectivity with the surrounding natural environment. Very quickly, one of the constraints of particularly sort of the London urban environment, we're looking for places to retrofit SuDS. This is up in Hornsey with Adam, who I thought I saw earlier, Adam Littler from Haringey. You can't, the idea that we can't do SuDS underneath existing trees, because how could we can't dig out around these roots. We would start killing the trees. But we wanted to find a way of using these sorts of spaces in urban environments for SuDS functionality, but without doing excavation below the roots. Because the rate of infiltration typically below trees like this is massive. Also, those trees tend to be drought stressed in the summer, so it really felt like there was a sort of marriage made in heaven just waiting to happen here. So what we did is we blocked off a couple of road gullies, intercepted that water with this sort of S-wave sort of speed hump stroke channel to divert the water into that same mundane grass verge. We planted that with meadow, and it's now got a different maintenance regime, so increased the infiltration even greater, and massive biodiversity. And we did this just by creating a very shallow berm around the edge of this. This protective fencing it's disappeared now. This was just as it was establishing. So there's just a gentle berm runs along here. So we take the water in one end, and it spreads as a sheet underneath these trees. And so far, there hasn't been a rainfall event yet in the last sort of year and a half where the water's got any more than halfway along this. So even though we're not actually doing dedicated storage and attenuation, we're just spreading it out under these trees to maximise the infiltration and maximise natural losses. So of course, every bit of pollutant that water's carrying has not made it to the Moselle River. Those trees, instead of getting what water might make it past their own canopy, are now getting a serious dose of water collected from the adjacent highway. So in summer they're a lot less drought stressed. And now the community has a much more biodiverse and attractive grass verge. I think we'd all agree that those sorts of opportunities are everywhere in every urban environment. And I guess on holidays, we sort of frustrate our families taking photos of drainage features around the world, and also sort of depressing postcards of mundane landscapes that really they're really not working hard at any level, not for people, not for wildlife, and clearly aren't providing any real sort of SuDS functionality. I think the opportunity is for SuDS to, a bit like Andy was saying, those developments probably wouldn't have happened at those schools if it wasn't for the desire to do the SuDS. But the SuDS has then delivered the school a lot more benefits. And quite often the benefits of SuDS aren't always directly, the water management benefits don't necessarily directly benefit where you're putting the SuDS. So it's really important to have those other benefits that can transform these sorts of dead spaces into a valuable community resource. I think that's it. Thank you.